那他们在分享的时候，我实在是忍不住啊，就一直想到旧约圣经里面的场景，这个有关这个诺亚方舟。那诺亚方舟呢，其实是一个大灾难，然后在这个大灾难的过程里面呢，有一条船，像那个 spaceship 一样，有一条船，然后呢选择了各种物种、各种 organ。然后呢，这些 organ 他们基本上就被存留在地上。那就是我们今天在讲的这些，看起来好像是非常现在 contemporary 跟未来可是事实上在我们的历史，那不管你是相信或不相信圣经旧约的故事，那可是呢，在每一个文明里面都曾经发生过这些事情。那今天我们是用不一样的语汇跟不一样的这个思维的方式，然后重新来看什么是 organ， 那什么是灾难，那什么是这所有的权力关系。所以在这样的三位非常精彩的讲者的分享的过程里面，那特别是在座的各位艺术家、年轻的艺术家们，以及各位老师们，不知道你们有没有什么想要这个response 或者是想要问的问题？那我们现在开放给大家。那因为时间实在是有一点点紧，所以呢，我们如果说各位的问题等一下没有办法真的回答的话，那我们傍晚的时候还会有一个总 Q&A 那我们会留在那个时候再来继续。所以请大家不要有时间的压力。可是呢，我们等一下大概在12点15到20左右的时候，为了厨房的工作人员的关系所以我们可能会必须要 stop。好，那各位有没有什么问题？黄生全黄老师有没有什么问题？
问题，然后就是针对刚刚教授所提出的在后过程的管理系统，就是我觉得可以看到说，在他所提出的这一套管理系统里面，它其实有很多不同层面，针对不同层面的应变，然后治理上面的应变，然后，但是我觉得它绝大多数它其实可能是关注在资讯的整合跟它的物流的配送方面的，然后，但是我很好奇说，因为其实他刚刚有提出一个就是。它什么 total disaster management cycle， 然后这个 cycle 看起来是从预防，然后到整个就是灾后重建，尤其他刚刚有提到说，特别提到从就是 recovery 到 reconstruction， 但是我觉得算即便他刚刚前面在讲到call center 的时候，有提到说，其实当他们很焦急的时候打电话来，像你地方官员说，可能打电话给警察或是询问什么，他其实有一点提到说。你在面对紧急状态的时候，可能要稍稍去同理灾民的心。可是我还是会很好奇说，日本政府的现况，或者说在早年教授所提到这一套 SOP 里面，它是不是有针对这个整个的他刚刚所提到的 recovery 或是 reconstruction 的这个安置的过程，在整个经济的架构上面，或是个人心理层面上面的应变的配套。
刘老师。
Amelia from CAA, and I would like to ask the third presenter about in one of your slides you have list all the 500 processes defined in 48 categories. I was wondering if you have done a kind of matching between all these processes could be or will be processed on the handheld device.
Handheld device.
For instance, if someone needs a loan, but all his all belong was kind of washed away. So how to locate him in the shelter, and then provide necessary simplified application process of the law, and then the connecting process to support the victim under the handheld device. So if there's a kind of mapping between some of the process could be done by a kind of application framework on the handheld or the other kind of environment, then there will be a kind of international standard for providers collaborated, then provide these kind of solutions for the victims when they were in the shelter on the disaster site, and then there will be kind of relief in some of their kind of situation.
Thank you for the talks. I have a question a bit for everybody to see how the things combine together. I know in the past, social media, for example, Twitter, so privately owned social media mostly, sometimes communicate data about disaster faster than the police does, for example, or other governmental organizations, just because people report on the spot what is happening. And I know that there has been research on how to incorporate social media data to inform people about disaster. And my question, I'm wondering actually, if we could currently, because if we want it or not currently, a lot of those things are privately owned, but could we somehow hack the system for now that we incorporate this data to help these situations without jeopardizing the privacy of people? I wonder if there is a limit there, or if we could somehow create something that could help us there.
OK， 那这边还有Tom还有 Mel， 他们俩问。
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to comment that I think it's fantastic that we have Rob sitting next to Muniyoshi with your presentations and your inputs talking about the spaceship and flying into this future, and Muniyoshi talking about disaster planning. Kind of a grotesque, in a sense, parallel. And my question is what you see as, and at first it didn't make any sense to me, but I think it's an interesting overlap. But my question for you two is where you see the overlaps between the spaceship planning and the future and this disaster kind of planning. But then I had a question for Chris, and my question to you is on the funding. I'm not sure if you talked about it in your presentation, but is it coming from the government, or to what extent is it coming from companies who are providing the technology, for example, smartphone kind of? The question for me is always, when I see this kind of a program, to what extent is technology being marketed, or to what extent is it research being done that's, in a sense, perhaps even a critical kind of research? So get funding and the opportunities to be critical.
Yeah, I've got a question for Chris. I was interested in the way you framed Barad. I'm not familiar very much with her work, so I just wanted to know more. In terms of this shift from kind of executive machine apparatus to one of apportionment and measure. And I couldn't see the difference between those elements. So it seemed to me like it was still about reproducing a kind of statistical regime, which is one of accountability. And maybe that's also reproduced in the notion of citizen science, which seems to be a merger of your schemas from public research and scientific or academic research. Those schemas, of course, were necessarily reductive. What you had as public research struck me very much as the type of work you do in the academy. But in any case, I guess the question is, really, you know, what is the difference between executive apparatuses and ones of measurement?
我们先暂时收集问题到这里啊。那 how about start now, please?
Sure. So let me start with the last question, that which is, I think, a very interesting and also tough one. I think when we speak of Barat, we should understand she is a quantum physicist. They are a quantum physicist first, and therefore this is a materialistic approach to notions of measurement. When we see the way measurement occurs on a quantum level, the appearing of matter is understood to be a performative appearance. So the act of measurement is understood to actually make material reality appear. And her thought implicates more mundane acts of measurement to this same type of practice as a quantum level measurement. So making reality appear in its physical nature is, let's say, the foundation of her notion of measurement, which means that it is in that sense executive, that it makes things to come to matter, and to say that, to translate that to a more, let's say, everyday perspective, I think it's not so much about statistics or probability, therefore, and then bandwidths of things that might occur in the future, but actually the act of measuring something, and I think this speaks to researchers generally, irrespective of an academic context or another type of context, that there is a form of responsibility in understanding that we are not drawing from an objective reality and describing something which is already out there, or rather we are painting reality, we are constructing reality, and therefore the way in which we choose to construct, be it a data set or a more qualitative description of reality, is actually an act of bringing forth reality, also in a very fundamental materialist sense. So that means that there's I think, a form of responsibility to doing research which goes beyond trying to be true to some kind of external reality, but there's a higher level of individual responsibility to making a certain reality appear, and that is a reality that we make appear over and beyond other possible realities that we could choose to make present. So that this act of showing something to exist is an ethical act, and is something we cannot otherwise but take individual responsibility for. And I think for me that leads to this notion of citizen science in terms of public research being not something that is framed in an academic sense, but on the sense of individual ethics, that irrespective of what kind of institutional context we operate in, there's always this matter of individual responsibility as to how we decide to cut up the world, frame it, and then present it to others. So that would be, I think, the difference. So I think, yes, it is always executive, but in a more fundamental sense of individual responsibility.
I forgot for questions. So for one by one?
Just maybe wrap up together. Summarize. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Summarize?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. So maybe first question is how we contribute to the recovery and reconstruction. Okay. So emergency phase and recovery and reconstruction is totally different. Okay. Recovery and reconstruction is how we can construct new city planning. there is a very long discussion, a long time we need. So that's why emergencies, how we can quickly manage information. Recovery and reconstruction is different. And second question is, you thank you very much. You explained so many things. So how we can, for the local government people, maybe we can provide, your task is this one. Then we can develop apps. Then now what you should do is this one. Then if you finish your job, then local government report. Then we can understand the progress of each steps. Okay, and the second one is for the evacuee people, how we can provide information for the evacuees. That is, now we develop all service. What is the necessary service for the victims? Then now we create all database. Then for the situation, then we can provide necessary information for different victims. If you have family, okay, this information is important for this time. If you are single, if you are a student, this information is now important. Now we control, managed by like AI. And your question is Twitter or SNS. So then now we develop one SNS database system. So all Twitter in Japan, we collect all Twitter data. Then we analyze what is important information by Twitter. Then we extract. Then we understand, okay, this Twitter is maybe true. Then we can respond based on this Twitter. Now we are filtered that this is true or not. This is very difficult to judge this is true or false. And your question is very difficult. So, okay, I'll ask you.
Well, in fact, it's a close relationship because most disasters are now coming from climate change, right? And so we came from burning fossil fuels like crazy, and it's got to stop. So one of the reasons for actually having this Internet of Things, for having digital addressability in every object, and having basically computer power in the rest, is for full resource management. And so this Internet of Things is going to give us already, and especially here in China, where we have a lot of solar, we see recyclability, so we'll go to a kind of circular economy, and the only way we can go to circular economy is to have item level addressability. So we'll know basically where every object is. And so in one way, so now we're basically arguing this as a kind of, from a control perspective, and a kind of matrix. But it's basically about transparency. And so for me, it's always been about transparency. So going towards a full transparent situation of basically all resources will lead to extreme resource management and extreme energy management. And this is what we need. And I think this Internet of Things, of course, which is pretty old, it comes like ambient intelligence, ubiquitous computing, is 50 years old as an operation, it's hundreds of years old as a tooling operation, is our only shot at climate change. So basically the two are very interrelated, and I think in Japan there's two very specific cases. One is the nuclear disaster, which then had Patch Bay with my good friend Usman Haq, who set up one of the first IoT platforms, and they actually then found out that the government was not really giving all the right measurements about the radiation, and there was lots of civic volunteers in the area setting up Arduinos and basically producing their own radiation figures. And the second case is basically the same disaster, where I was in Shanghai 3 years ago, where we had Japanese engineers talking about this disaster, with a lot of new information, because basically 10 centimeters of water wiped out the entire technical infrastructure. So their entire notion of smart city building is now changing because of the disaster. And there's now also talking about having some drones fly up with some critical infrastructure, so that at least you make sure that your infrastructure is not on land level or below. And but basically the correlation is, I think the climate change and Internet of Things are extremely interrelated, and in a kind of, like in the ship sense, when I start thinking about it in a literary way, I think it's so logical that all this comes up at the moment where we show that humans are totally incapable of actually dealing with this planet. So humans are actually orbiting this planet out of action. They're consuming 4 or 5 planets basically every day. So we show no stewardship of this planet. And so we need something else. We've lost our faith in all the punishing elements, and so we conjured up our own new, we actualized our own new sort of, how do you want to call it? We actualized our own new other, really, our doppelganger staring us into the face. And you can call it the ghost, you can call it the big data, you call it the AI, call it the gaze, call it what you want, but it's there. So I think it's pretty correlated. Yeah.
We have time for
I'm just really compelled, sorry, to ask a follow-up question here. So, I appreciate the critique of the human here. If, the Internet of Things does not distinguish between the object and subject, then in the event of extreme resource management, how do you distinguish that from extreme social management or extreme population management?
Well, in my ideal scenario, the sliders or the gaze will have, in any action, 25% for humans, 25% for animals, 25% for plants, and 25% for the planet. So this means in any service, for example, if you want to take 2 showers a day, you will not have tea. I'm sorry. So all the actions that we do can no longer be tuned only to this anthropological sort of human gaze, as if we're the epitaph of whatever. We are losing 60–70% of biodiversity. We're wiping out animals. We're wiping out resources. We're wiping out plants. And they should have a say as well. So I would like 25% for the robot, 25% for the plant, 25% for the animal, and 25% for the human in this new gaze, which will, I think, set us back in our natural place, sort of being a partner to all of this, sort of trying to greet the environment instead of only eating it.
Okay. 那个，因为时间的关系哦，我必须要 stop here 哦。可是呢，我觉得 Rob 他刚刚最后这个20就是1/4，非常棒哦。那个刚好就是 set up 一个我们那个等一下就是傍晚的时候我们可以从这个1/4开始哦。那我觉得这会是一个 big debate 哦。好，那就是谢谢大家，谢谢大家。